was raised in a centuries-old tradition.
Jerry!
Tutored in the ancient arts. Preparing for a moment that would challenge even the wisest and most skilled of all his ancestors.
I'll be the last man standing when it's all over in that town in Texas.
Now, from the makers of Enter the Dragon, comes the Big Brawl.
You don't fight right. He fights far.
Jackie Chan is going to the Big Brawl.
Hi everyone, welcome to Around the World in 80s Movies. My name is Vince Leo. I am the author of the film review website Quipster.net. I invite you to check out all of my written work, spanning all the way from the mid-1990s when I first started writing film reviews online. Quipster.net is where to go, QWIPSTER.net. While you're there, there's also a link to my other podcast that is very similar to this one. It covers films of the 1990s as well as newer films that are spin-offs or sequels to those films of the 1990s. It's called To the 90s and Beyond. You can find the link to that at my website, or you can just do a search. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, it probably appears on that platform as well. Today, we're going to be getting into the next three-part series, and we just did the Karate Kid films. Well, this film is going to be continuing on, at least martial arts cinema, at least for this next one. It is called Battle Creek Brawl. It came out in 1980. Some people might call it The Big Brawl because it was released in the United States as The Big Brawl, and it also appeared for many, many years, maybe a couple of decades, as The Big Brawl when it was appearing on television and cable showings. The Big Brawl is a Jackie Chan starring film, and the next three films I'm going to be talking about are early 1980s attempts to break Jackie Chan into the American film industry. And it all started right here with Jackie Chan's first American film. Battle Creek Brawl is an R-rated film. It does have violence and sensuality. I would definitely rate it less than that. I think it's PG-13 at best, and I will talk about some of that as we get into the review. The runtime for Battle Creek Brawl is 1 hour and 35 minutes. Obviously, it stars Jackie Chan, but besides him, Jose Ferrer, improbably, is also in this film. Mako, Ron Max, Christine DeBelle, H.B. Haggerty, and a whole lot of other smaller roles for people you might recognize if you're into pro wrestling or Hong Kong films as well. The director and the screenwriter for Battle Creek Brawl is Robert Clouse. Now, back in the 1970s, producers Fred Weintraub as well as Raymond Chow happened to be the founder of Golden Harvest Pictures, they had found international success with Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. Now, sadly, Bruce passed away before the film was released back in 1973. Following his death, the market for martial arts films exploded significantly. But despite numerous, and I mean numerous efforts in the years that followed to try to capitalize on that thirst for martial arts, nobody was able to achieve that same level of international popularity as Bruce Lee had right before his death. Now, in the late 1970s, a new talent did emerge in Hong Kong. His name is Jackie Chan. And at that time, he had already starred in 3 kung fu films that outperformed all of Bruce Lee's movies at the Asian box office. Now, recognizing that Jackie was having a lot of monumental success, Fred Weintraub saw an opportunity for Jackie to cross over into Hollywood, and he believed that Jackie Chan could achieve that same level of international stardom that Bruce had attained, and maybe even surpass it, because while Bruce primarily appealed to adolescent males, Jackie's trademark humor resonated with children who appreciated a lot of his goofy humor, and Jackie also garnered appreciation from female audience members. He had a vulnerability and a relatability that made him more than just some macho action star. And even older audiences, people who were watching movies before they had even heard of a martial arts film, they appreciated Jackie's slapstick style, which was very reminiscent and definitely drew a lot of influence from comedic legends like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd. Now, Jackie's diverse skill set wasn't just an overnight thing. It was cultivated, in fact, over his entire life. When Jackie was 7 years old, his parents had to relocate to Australia for work, and they really weren't going to be able to take care of him with all of the work they had to do there, and they really couldn't afford it anyway, so they enrolled Jackie into this 10-year program at the Peking Opera School in Hong Kong. Jackie's father expected that the school might also help instill some discipline in the often rebellious Jackie. And at the school, Jackie did learn discipline. In fact, he trained 12 hours a day, grueling in martial arts and acrobatics and acting. And he especially trained intensively in the ways of Kung Fu. He mastered techniques such as punching and kicking and jumping, and using a whole variety of weapons from sticks to swords. 10 years later, his contract was done at the age of 17. Jackie still continued to train in Hapkido and Judo, karate, and boxing. And he started off in the film industry using those skills as a stunt performer primarily, and then he grew into a fight coordinator and a fight choreographer, and then he started securing minor acting roles as well. And soon his impressive talent established him as eventually a leading actor in Kung Fu films, and that led to a contract with a filmmaker named Lo Wei, and Lo Wei happened to produce Bruce Lee's pre-Hollywood works in Hong Kong. Now, in 1978, Wei did, as a money-making operation, he lent Jackie Chan to seasonal films, where he made Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, as well as Drunken Master, and both films did something that the Lo Wei films weren't doing, which was highlighting his untapped slapstick comedy and stunt acrobatic skills. And the result was phenomenal. Both films achieved greater box office success in Asia than even Jaws. Now, when Jackie returned to filmmaking with Lo Wei, he made Fearless Hyena 2, going back to that same old revenge kung fu, no humor, just straight up trying to be Bruce Lee. He became very frustrated with Wei continuing to try to mold him into that same Bruce Lee mold. So Jackie felt that Wei's films were not highlighting his new style, and that's ultimately why he was destined to be a failure at the box office yet again. Now, during this period, both Golden Harvest Pictures, as well as a rival production house by the Shaw Brothers, they were attempting to break Wei's contract with Jackie. Now, although the Shaw Brothers offered Jackie a higher salary, Golden Harvest Pictures ultimately succeeded with Jackie because they had connections into the English language film market, and they made a promise that they were going to support Jackie 100% in achieving stardom outside of Asia, especially in the United States. Now, facing threat from Wei's connections with the Chinese triads, Jackie decided to take the opportunity to leave Hong Kong altogether with the help of people in the industry in Golden Harvest. With the success of Young Master with Golden Harvest, Raymond Chow signed him to a multi-film deal to make films in the United States, supported by the fact that Jackie was becoming a star in other parts of the world, including Japan. Now, Golden Harvest, they were going to closely model Jackie Chan's introduction to America after Bruce Lee's. They had success with Bruce. The formula was there to break him in. They were going to return Robert Clouse, the director of Enter the Dragon, back at the helm. Warner Brothers was going to be handling, again, the distribution in English-speaking countries. Unlike Jackie's films in Hong Kong, where he also wore different hats while making the film, he was a producer, he was a director, he was also the film's choreographer for his movies. Here, he was going to be limited strictly to acting under his contract for his projects. However, to sweeten the deal, it did come with a $1 million paycheck, and that was going to be the highest ever salary for an Asian actor at the time. Jackie's contract also included his participation in a nationwide publicity tour, and that featured appearances on many American talk shows all around the country. Now, this situation presented a significant challenge because Jackie spoke no English whatsoever. And here he was scheduled to appear not only in an all-English film, but he was going to have to talk to the press on a seemingly daily basis, especially once this film was released. And on top of that, this film was also going to be the first to feature his own voice. His Hong Kong kung fu movies, even though he spoke the language of those films were filmed for money savings, as well as to dub them for international markets. They were filmed without sound at all, and then later had dialogue added by professional voice actors. Now, with production set to begin in 2 weeks, an English tutor was immediately hired, but teaching proved very difficult because Jackie had not received any formal education. He'd never been in a classroom to learn anything since he was 12 years old. The American press immediately dubbed Jackie Chan, when he was coming to America, as the new Bruce Lee. So while Jackie did admire Bruce Lee, he was very cautious about being viewed as an imitator. He compared being lumped in with Bruce Lee as if Clint Eastwood was seen as the new John Wayne. Now, they both did westerns, but each of them had completely different styles within the same genre, and Clint Eastwood went on to do many other things other than westerns as well. And Clouse acknowledged that Jackie was more versatile than Bruce. He demonstrated more emotional depth. He definitely had a penchant for acrobatics and very high martial arts skills, but that trademark sense of humor made him completely distinct. But the American press's knowledge of martial arts was too limited to see him as anything beyond Bruce Lee at the time. And Jackie was chagrined by this because in film, Bruce Lee represents this invincible Superman, whereas Jackie symbolizes a relatable everyman. And Bruce is serious and he's intense. And Jackie is not that. He's joyful and he's humorous. Jackie views Bruce primarily as a martial artist who became an actor, but he saw himself as an actor primarily who happened to know martial arts, but he also could do comedy and drama. He humorously would refer to himself as basically Dustin Hoffman, but with fighting skills. Despite his success, Jackie was growing wary at that time of just doing martial arts films anyway. He dreamed of transitioning into dramatic roles. Maybe he could be Dustin Hoffman. He could be in the next Kramer versus Kramer once his English improved. Now, Battle Creek Brawl, it was going to be a period piece. It was set in Chicago in 1938, and Jackie was going to be playing here a character named Jerry Kwan. Jerry is the son of a struggling restaurant owner. The restaurant owner, his father, is pressured by the local mob for protection money, and Jerry wishes to defend his family and his restaurant with the martial arts skills that were taught by his uncle Herbert, played by Mako. Now, still, his father forbids his son from getting involved in any sort of fighting. And in a confrontation with mob henchmen, Jerry's skillfulness at self-defense without seeming like he's trying attracts the attention of the big mob boss in town called Domenici, who recruits Jackie for the Last Man Standing brawl in Battle Creek, Texas, to help him win a bet against a rival gangster. The event is going to feature 18 fighters who are willing to risk serious injury. It attracts thousands of spectators, both in person and via radio broadcast. Now, when Jackie had the script read for him, translated for him for Battle Creek Brawl, he did raise some concerns right off the bat. It had a serious tone. He wanted to emphasize what worked for him so well in those smash success Hong Kong films. His comedic side, his vulnerable side. He didn't want to be portrayed as just this vengeful killer in just another film. The producers promised that they were going to discuss Jackie's qualms with Robert Clouse, but they all still at the time were favoring just adhering very strictly to the successful formula of Enter the Dragon, so they didn't want to interfere too much at this stage. So the company flew Jackie out to Los Angeles, and Jackie immediately started working with a private tutor who served as his interpreter during interviews. Jackie started to improve his English in the evenings by watching American television, especially commercials, which he felt would help him learn common expressions and to gain an understanding of American culture, what they considered important. Still, after a week of English lessons and all of that television watching, Jackie could only recall basic English phrases for ordering food. Now, Jackie did often visit Chinese restaurants in Los Angeles because some of them had very authentic Chinese food that reminded him of home. Jackie also started to meet up with friends who were visiting from Hong Kong, and together they visited attractions like Disneyland and Magic Mountain. While trying to reach the San Diego Zoo, Jackie was driving and he got lost. He ended up getting pulled over because of his erratic driving. He had no idea where he was going, and frustrated, he asked the cop, "How do I get home?" Jackie stopped driving on American freeways altogether after that because he found them overwhelming compared to navigating the smaller streets in Hong Kong. Everything in America was too big. On the positive side, during his travels around California, Jackie did end up meeting Taiwanese singer Teresa Teng Li Jun, which led to eventually a romantic relationship. Now, filming for Battle Creek Brawl began in mid-January in San Antonio, which was transformed to resemble Chicago for parts of it. The climax scenes, the Battle Creek Brawl itself, that was shot in a small town just outside of San Antonio called Floresville. TV crews from Hong Kong came over. They followed Jackie around during the entire filmmaking process. Residents of Floresville and of San Antonio, including the high school band in Floresville, they participated in the film as extras. The crew replaced all of the town signs and brought in a lot of vintage cars to try to match the film's era of the 1930s. Now, getting out of Los Angeles into Texas did not make Jackie feel any less dwarfed by the size. In fact, Texas, in many regards, seemed even bigger and vaster. But even though Texas is over 600 times larger than Hong Kong to Jackie did feel lonelier, despite its much higher population density. And Jackie noted that Texans seemed friendlier to strangers than Hong Kong residents were to just even their own neighbors. Jackie was disappointed to find that the Chinese restaurants in San Antonio were far less authentic than those he had discovered in Los Angeles. And disappointed with the Americanized Chinese cuisine, he started eating more traditional American dishes that he knew how to order with his limited English vocabulary. Pizza, tacos, burgers, fries, ice cream, and Coca-Cola. Ultimately, though, because Texas, known for their cattle ranching and meat, he settled on thick cuts of steak as his go-to choice while he was in restaurants in Texas. Unfortunately, Jackie's unhealthy eating habits did cause him to faint while he was at a restaurant one night. After regaining consciousness, he was encouraged to go get a checkup at a hospital, and there it was revealed that he had dangerously high cholesterol levels. Following a doctor's warning about health risks if he were to continue on his eating the way he was eating, Jackie then and there decided to cut out all fast food and carbonated drinks from his diet, something that actually continues to this day. Jackie rehearsing his lines required so much focus that he found it impossible to convey emotions while acting. He felt comfortable performing in Cantonese, but with English, he was relying too much on memorization to emote properly. So that to help, they started using hand signals. One finger while he was reciting his lines meant smile while he was reciting them. Two fingers meant be angry while he was reciting the lines. Therefore, he could at least have the semblance of acting, even though he had no idea what he was saying. The production company added 2 more tutors to try to assist with translation and rehearsing his lines around the clock. Now, there is a key roller derby action sequence at the heart of Battle Creek Brawl. Jackie needed to learn how to roller skate altogether. He had absolutely no experience how to do it. But he was determined to learn, so he decided to practice at the beach boardwalk for about a week. By the film's end, Christine DeBelle, his co-star, also a beginner, successfully jumped over barrels. Although this was grueling at the time, Jackie parlayed that ability to master roller skating into exponentially more difficult things through his acting experience in films in years to come. Because he mastered roller skating, he progressed into skateboarding and barefoot water skiing and snow sports, all of which were featured in future films. And he also refined his conversational English by that time as well. Now, Jose Ferrer, as I mentioned, improbably was cast as the mob boss. At the time, he was doing some films, bad films sometimes, for a paycheck. And Christine DeBelle, his co-star, his romantic love interest. After her casting, DeBelle was a passenger in a car that ended up in an accident, and she smashed her head into the windshield, and it did require some stitches near her eye. She was very much concerned about being replaced, but the production team opted to wait for her full recovery before proceeding because she had kind of a unique chemistry with Jackie Chan, the performer Jackie Chan. She was very patient with him and comfortable, and they felt they needed that friendly presence around Jackie to complete this film. Pat Johnson, I mentioned Pat Johnson 3 times over the past few episodes, talking because he was the choreographer as well as the referee appearing in the Karate Kid films. He's in this film as well. He plays a character named Carl. He serves as the stunt coordinator for this film. The production also sought about 40 professional wrestlers as well as former athletes to come in who had some acting experience to be participants in the main brawl to play the so-called meanies, and that included 2-time judo champion Gene LaBelle, Ernie Holmes, a former All-Pro defensive lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and HB, which stands for Hard-Boiled Haggerty, a retired Detroit Lions star who turned into a character actor at this point of his career. They were selected for key roles. Haggerty portrays the homicidal fighter Billy Kiss. Don Slatton, known as the Lawman in professional wrestling circles, he has a non-speaking part in this film. Famous pro wrestler Terry Funk also auditioned for this film, but he wasn't cast, ironically, because he was deemed neither ugly enough nor nasty enough for the role. If you know Terry Funk's wrestling career, you would find that very funny. Now, Jackie struggled to adapt to the American film production style. American film productions use a 3-camera setup. By contrast, Hong Kong filmmakers often use just one camera and would require actors to repeat scenes from different angles. Jackie noted that collaborating with American stunt performers was even more challenging because they had very different philosophies than in Hong Kong, because in Hong Kong, the focus really is much more on the movement. But in the United States, it's more on fighting techniques. And he was going against professional wrestlers. Now, professional wrestlers can inflict damage, but martial artists are too great of a challenge because they have dynamic speed. Now, because Jackie was new and he was really a fish out of water and he had hardly any knowledge of English Hollywood productions, they decided they were going to try initially to keep Jackie from deviating at all from the script. They felt that this was going to improve the film. If they could just keep him from straying too far, eventually a good film was going to be delivered. But halfway through the production, Jackie became very concerned that the movie was not going to meet audiences' expectations. He was very frustrated at the time. He wanted to add ideas that he felt were much better than those that were being brought in by the director Robert Clouse, who he felt had really no real idea of how to make an entertaining martial arts film, despite the fact that he did have success with Enter the Dragon. Now, when the Hollywood production team learned that Jackie was struggling, they immediately flew out to Texas to try to discuss the situation with Robert Clouse. They emphasized that the goal here was to try to help Jackie succeed. It was not to just be an imitation of Bruce Lee. Now, although Robert Clouse did, after that meeting, grant Jackie a lot more creative freedom, there was a tight budget here that they had to contend with and a tight schedule. So the time was very limited for Jackie to be able to develop the kind of complex action scenes he was accustomed to in Hong Kong. There just wasn't enough time to really do more than just a few little things here and there. And Jackie really did struggle to try to adapt himself into Hollywood. I mean, in Hong Kong, Jackie Chan was known for his exceptional fighting techniques. After moving to America, the stunt coordinator, Pat Johnson, suggested adapting his methods to appeal primarily to American audiences. And Johnson argued to Jackie that martial arts punches looked really weak. They would be seen as ineffective because, he had to land so many. Jackie had to learn roundhouse-style punches to try to enhance that on-screen force. While real kung fu fights, action cinema requires these to extend. They demand them to go longer, and that meant more dynamic sequences to try to satisfy audiences' expectations. They prolonged the fighting as much as possible. One punch and knocking somebody out, like they do in Hollywood, was just not entertaining, he felt, to people who were going to go see his films. Additionally, Hollywood stunt performers often lacked the training to match Jackie's agility. They were very limited in their ability to showcase their skills. American stunt performers specialized in such things as falling from a horse or falling off of a building. Hong Kong counterparts were equally highly skilled in martial arts as Jackie. Now, in Hollywood, the actors, they were told to minimize physical contact. They couldn't actually physically touch the people. They had to try to make it look like they actually hit somebody, but even though they were a foot off. In Hong Kong, though, there was a cultural emphasis on taking hits during the performances. They actually were hitting each other. Additionally, in the United States, there were a lot of union regulations that provided protections, especially for stunt performers. In Hong Kong, there was no such union. Injuries were just part of the job, and getting injured meant just losing your job. So oftentimes, a lot of these stunt performers in Hong Kong would just continue fighting, even though they were severely injured at the time. Now, Jackie was also used to performing as well as choreographing his own stunts. Johnson did have the final say on the set, and that was to Jackie's detriment, he felt. He thrived on improvisation, and that would, he felt, engage audiences. The American approach relied on meticulous planning. Before each scene, he didn't get to improvise very much, and it did not align with his style. And his ideas of what he wanted to do for each scene often led to shocking Clouse as well as the crew. For instance, one day, Jackie suggested he was going to do a 50-foot jump into this stack of boxes. But Weintraub and Clouse pushed back on this. They didn't want to lose their star performer to an injury right off the bat. So he settled for a 6-foot jump from the first floor, shot in such a way that would make it appear as if the jump was much higher. It took a lot less time to set up, and it was far less dangerous, they felt, for the same result. Now, Jackie did notice that while American films were admittedly more organized than in Hong Kong, this time is money axiom of Hollywood conflicted greatly with creativity, he felt. In contrast, Hong Kong's relaxed production schedules, they allowed much more time to refine scenes, a flexibility Jackie felt was completely missing in Hollywood. He felt the entire production was rushed and was hastily slapped together in the end. He felt the entire production was rushed and it stifled his originality and creativity. And that resulted in him feeling like American movie sets were so boring compared to those in Hong Kong. Nobody spoke his language, for one thing, so he wasn't really getting to engage with anybody. But he was also, in Hong Kong, he was catered to like he was royalty. In the United States, he felt like a beggar. He was largely unacknowledged. Nobody knew how to speak his language. He didn't know how to speak back, so they just kind of left him alone. Jackie felt increasingly frustrated on the set. So many of his suggestions were totally rejected without even a thought. He was accustomed to a lot more creative control in Hong Kong. For instance, he envisioned that he could do this elaborate entrance involving a jump out of a car, a somersault, and then a backflip. But the director, Robert Clouse, just said, get out of the car and walk. There's no need for all of that. It makes no sense in the context of the film anyway. Now, Jackie did comply, but he later said, hey, nobody's going to pay to see Jackie Chan walk. And Clouse replied that for this movie, they would. And frustrated, Jackie just wanted to tell Clouse, F you, and walk off the set. But instead, Jackie did calm down. He followed Clouse's directions, even though he felt deep down it was not going to resonate with the kind of martial arts audiences he knew would be there. Jackie also felt that he didn't have a good enough understanding of American humor, so he decided to give Clouse the benefit of the doubt, but he still mentally noted that what he couldn't do for ideas in this film, he was going to utilize in some of his future films, and he did. But that was the biggest struggle for Jackie. Jackie was also intimidated by his co-star, Christine DeBelle. She had this openness about her sexuality during their romantic scenes. DeBelle, she had appeared in Playboy before. She had also just starred in a softcore version of Alice in Wonderland. Jackie was very uncomfortable doing any kind of romance because romance is rarely, if ever, included in Hong Kong action films. Certainly he had never done one before. Audiences preferred continuous action. They didn't want to see their action stars smooch anybody. Asian viewers might accept affection in American movies they were seeing, but they disapproved highly whenever any of their stars, especially Jackie Chan, kissed a girl on the screen. He got a lot of complaints, by the way, about his scenes with DeBelle in Battle Creek Brawl. Now, Battle Creek Brawl, there are several anachronisms. I mean, 70s style outfits are in this film, hairstyles as well. The roller derby scene, I think people do cite as maybe anachronistic, although historically it did exist in the 1930s, and it did stem from Chicago. Interestingly enough, that's where it's set in this film as well. You will see at least one fighter wearing Chuck Taylor Converse All-Star sneakers. I mean, some of the wardrobe, unfortunately, definitely did not come from the 1930s. And it overlooks a lot of, segregation of the time, this interracial relationship that seems to go unnoticed, even by some of the more overtly racist characters in this film. They don't really comment on it. After finishing the production, Robert Clouse immediately began to work on Jackie Chan's next proposed movie, which was going to be, it actually underwent several title changes. It was going to be a pirate movie. Initially, Clouse titled it The Blood Run, and then it was changed to Blood Island, and then finally, Why Me? The script was going to reunite Jackie with Christine DeBelle. Once again, they felt that chemistry was worth keeping going in the next film. And it was set to be filmed in parts of England as well as Hawaii. Jackie Chan decided to buy a house in America, expecting a more extended stay. He aimed to avoid conflicts by going back to Hong Kong with Lo Wei and his Chinese triad connections over his contract. But despite being young and skilled in martial arts, Jackie recognized the importance of evolving. He didn't want to do martial arts his entire career. And he wanted his career to thrive. He wanted to improve his English, his acting, his writing, his adaptability. He wanted to adapt to the U.S. film industry. He wanted to go back to school. He hired a British tutor. He wanted to also learn things for his films. He didn't want somebody else doing his stunts. He wanted to learn how to do his own stunts, like he did in Hong Kong, horseback riding and fencing for the pirate film. The pirate film, unfortunately, never did quite get made, for reasons I may discuss on the next episode, but we'll see. Lalo Schifrin, he was another returnee from Enter the Dragon. He composes a very catchy score for this. In fact, you watch this movie once, you'll have the score stuck in your head for days, if not weeks afterward. Schifrin, coincidentally, maybe not, but he later also created the music for Jackie Chan's Rush Hour series. Golden Harvest presented a 30-minute reel of Jackie's top fight sequences at the Cannes Film Festival, and that was to try to promote him as a rising star, an international star that they should get to know. The title did get a change from Battle Creek Brawl to The Big Brawl before its release in some countries, especially in the United States. But regardless of the title, in 1980, America just was unprepared for someone like Jackie Chan. And he was equally unprepared for the American media. His colleagues advised him to prepare for the reporters that they had in America. They could be demanding and brutal. But he waved it off. He thought their warnings were unnecessary. He didn't need to worry. He would be able to handle it. But during his nationwide film promotion, Jackie observed that many interviewers, they struggled to even remember his name. They often mistakenly referred to his martial arts skills as karate instead of kung fu. They invariably, almost every single time, compared him to Bruce Lee. Jackie felt that the American press expected him not just to be an actor or to interview him as an entertainer, that he was just there to perform kung fu moves on command as if he were some sort of trained animal. On one occasion, after flying from Los Angeles to New York for a television interview, the situation heated up between him and the host. It became very awkward, and then the interview never even aired, despite flying to and from across country. The official reason they gave was that Jackie's English just was not good enough to be understood by the audience, so they weren't going to air it. There were also occasions when people at press events would challenge Jackie to a fight. He was promoted as some sort of kung fu master instead of an actor or entertainer. During one interview, this onlooker asked if his kung fu moves would be effective against a real attack. The interviewer's staff were curious about the situation, so they stood back to watch. They did not intervene, and that led to eventually a violent confrontation. The assailant swung at Jackie. Jackie delivered a low kick that knocked the attacker down, and that prompted the staff to step in and protect the assailant from Jackie. After some interviews, Jackie would return to his hotel room in tears. Everybody in Hong Kong admired him, and all of his work was respected. In America, they all seemed to care very little about getting to know the real him. He was just seen as some sort of martial arts guy that was going to be the next Bruce Lee. Now, Jackie did initially enjoy the anonymity of being in the United States, where he could walk freely without being surrounded by fans like he would in Hong Kong, but loneliness was overwhelming for him. He longed for somebody to talk to anywhere. In fact, he attended the screening of The Big Brawl when it was in the United States by himself, and he found it extremely depressing. His film played in an almost empty theater when he went to see it. He sat there in painful silence, surrounded by just a handful of other attendees he didn't even know. Jackie grew unhappy as he sat there and watched the movie. He cited that this was poor acting. The dialogue seemed very dull. The fight choreography especially was awkwardly presented. And despite the large, muscular appearances of his opponents, their fighting skills were so lacking. All they were big and beefy. They just could not keep up with Jackie Chan on the screen. Jackie was told that one reason many Americans didn't appreciate The Big Brawl was that his fight scenes often lasted 5 to 10 minutes. His opponents remained on their feet despite receiving multiple punches and kicks. In contrast, a single kick from Bruce Lee invariably sent somebody flying across the room, and John Wayne or Clint Eastwood's punches would also do the same. Somehow, even though his fighting was spectacular, the fact that his opponents could still get up and continue to fight meant that somehow his kung fu was weak in the minds of American audiences. Now, Jackie was capable of delivering very powerful strikes, but the fighting style of that did not suit him. He just didn't want to compromise his style to achieve overnight success with his films. Now, many people regard Battle Creek Brawl as some sort of big disappointment, a big bomb, a failure to try to deliver Jackie Chan. Now, contrary to popular belief, it actually was not a failure. Not at all. The film did recoup its $6 million budget just in the United States, and it earned about 4 times that internationally. It performed especially well in Japan and Mexico and France, because they had very effective promotions there and a very successful publicity tour for Jackie. Now, the film does move around between Chicago, San Francisco, Texas. It doesn't really accurately define each location because, pretty much they were all filmed in Texas. And that might be frustrating to some viewers who are expecting to see some landmarks of their favorite cities. But I think there's a campy action here that makes it somewhat irresistible if you like that sort of thing. You have thrilling sequences. You have a vibrant supporting cast. I think Battle Creek Brawl, despite what's going against it, ultimately does become a very entertaining film, thanks to its exciting moments and that humorous silliness. Now, the film was the first attempt to introduce Jackie Chan to American audiences. Despite some criticism, it does hold a special place in my heart. The Big Brawl, which was the title when I saw it, was my first Jackie Chan movie, excluding Cannonball Run. I did see Cannonball Run first, but when I finally did see Jackie Chan in a martial arts film, it was The Big Brawl. It was on cable. And I was blown away by it at the time, even though later, comparing it to, say, like Drunken Master, the kung fu in this film is much more primitive. But I do think that at the time, it uniquely blended kung fu and slapstick comedy in a way that nobody else was doing in Hollywood. Before watching this, I was familiar with martial arts as mostly revenge stories. Bruce Lee, of course, Chuck Norris, some of those other fighters from the 70s and the 80s. Cheesy late-night chopsocky films with poor dubbing and choreography. Some of that was just, kind of laugh-inducing. But not this film. I think this film is much more respectable and very entertaining, and I think acted relatively well despite Jackie's challenges with English. Now, this may not be Jackie Chan's most spectacular film from a choreography standpoint, but I do maintain Battle Creek Brawl is highly enjoyable. I think the fight scenes are superior to many U.S. kung fu movies of that era, and you weren't able to see a lot of Jackie Chan's films, his Hong Kong films, until much later. So people didn't recognize the brilliance of those Hong Kong films, but I still appreciate Jackie's performance here. I like the cheesy jokes in this film. They make me laugh. The quirkiness of it, it all adds to a fun and lighthearted slapstick action film that I appreciate even more for its absurdity. So despite many proclaiming it's a disappointment or a bomb for not meeting its ambitious revenue targets, particularly in Hong Kong, it failed miserably there compared to Jackie's other films. And it also failed to make Jackie Chan that household name in the United States like they were intending. It did actually work well. It established its popularity firmly much more in Japan and France and other countries, and it allowed his career to evolve into that of an international star, albeit a little bit more slowly, a little bit more drawn out than they were expecting. Now, I do want to talk about the R rating here because it was bestowed upon the MPAA, and that, I think, also cut into the potential audience that was there. Because although it shares its rating with Enter the Dragon, Battle Creek Brawl contains significantly less graphic violence. I think it would be of major appeal to younger viewers. I was a young viewer at the time when I saw this on TV. I was in my early teens. I loved it at the time. I would have loved to have gone to see this in the movie theater at the time if I could. As a 9-year-old or 10-year-old, I certainly could have handled whatever they were showing here. The violence here is not any more violent than seeing a wrestling match or watching just a kung fu movie on television. So if it were released today, I guarantee you it would not receive anything more than a PG-13 rating. Now, that memorable Lalo Schifrin score, I think, is a highlight as well. I do think all of that adds up to a lighthearted kung fu film that showcases Jackie Chan's unique blend of action and humor. And for that, I'm going to give Battle Creek Brawl 3.5 stars out of 4. 3.5 stars on my scale means I think it is a good kung fu film, despite the fact that Jackie Chan's films might be more engaging due to his acrobatics as well as his unbelievable slapstick and fighting technique in other films that are just jaw-dropping. I do think that for its time and for its place, and I think it's better than the vast majority of kung fu films that came out in Hollywood around this era. So that is why I give 3.5 stars to Battle Creek Brawl. I hope that you enjoyed this review. If you have your own thoughts on Battle Creek Brawl that you want to impart to me, you can find my contact information at my website. That's at quipster.net, QWIPSTER.net. links to my Twitter feed, or X if you want to call it, Facebook page, among other things. You can engage me there too, but I do think that email is the best way to go if you want to get in touch. I do know that there are some people that have written to me recently. I will get to you shortly. I had a lot on my plate, but I promise you I will write back, and anybody else who writes to me, I will write back to you as well. Quipster@gmail.com. That's Quipster with a W, QWIPSTER @gmail.com. Next episode, we're going to continue on with Jackie trying to break into the American film market. He was not the star of the film I'm going to be talking about next. In fact, the next two films, I might as well tell you, are films he makes a very small appearance in, but very memorable appearances. The Cannonball Run films, Cannonball Run and Cannonball Run 2. Those will be the next two episodes I talk about. So if you haven't seen Cannonball Run before, or if you haven't seen it in a while, granted, the humor is very much of the 1980s. There's probably humor that might make some people cringe today, but that was par for the course for its era. Keep an open mind about that. We'll be going back to 1981 for Cannonball Run. Check it out for the next episode. Thank you, everyone, once again, for listening and joining me as we continue our travels around the world in 80s movies.